Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Captain Hunter's podcast, the podcast that is dedicated towards bridging the divide between the police and the communities that they serve. So right now we're going to focus once again on the community. Well, actually we're going to focus on both. This is our midweek encouragement session. So I was really thinking about some really important details along with this. First of all, let me say that I hope that you all are staying safe and doing what you got to do as far as sanitizing and cleaning up and watching who you shake hands with and watching yourself as you touch doors with this coronavirus and all this stuff that's going on. So make sure that you're using those precautions and universal precautions when necessary in order to avoid infecting yourself, which of course would affect and infect your family. So make sure that you're doing what you got to do about that. But I came across an article the other day that I thought was very interesting. And the name of the article was "The Strongest Predictor of Men's Well-Being Isn't Family or Health." Thought this was very interesting because as I read through the article, as we'll get into a little bit, it really talked about what makes men happy. And it's not always family, and it's not always, we would think that it would be family or even their own physical health, but that's not often what it is. And we're talking about mental health and mental well-being. And so I think that was very important. Now, from a law enforcement aspect, there was an article that was just published in policemag.com. It says stopping officer suicides. And it goes on to talk about that in 2019 that there were about 228 suicides for law enforcement across the country. Meanwhile, there were only 132 police officers who died in the line of duty. Now, I don't mean to put the word only on there because any officer death is obviously tragic, and one is far too many as far as line of duty deaths and concerning in comparison to one line of duty death. All deaths are obviously tragic. So once again, this is about the community and the police. I don't want to make it about solely about the police, but the important thing to remember about this is that from a law enforcement aspect of it is that officers are dying more because of suicide rather than being killed in the line of duty. And there's another article that I came across. It says, "Why more men than women die by suicide?" And the article goes on, this is from BBC.com, and it goes on to talk about how more women are actually diagnosed with depression, more women are taking medications for depression. So the question has to be asked, why are more men dying because of suicide? Well, the answer is fairly simple, as the article goes on to state, and that is that men have access to more violent means, right? It's men who have the guns, men who are who have the means to kill themselves. Women attempt suicide a lot more often, but they are not always successful in their attempts. One of the biggest things that I wanted to take away from this is from the BBC article. It talks about the risk factors. And I just want to read just a little bit of this to you. One key element is communication, right? This is the risk factors. Why so many more men are at risk for, number one, depression, killing themselves, suicides, and things like that. Not just policemen, but all men, right? So make sure you share this episode. Any man or a person who you think may be struggling or just needs to hear this, right? If they're a male. It's too simplistic to say women are willing to share their problems and men tend to bottle them up. It is true that for generations, many societies have encouraged men to be strong and not to admit they're struggling. It often starts in childhood. We tell boys that boys don't cry, said Coleman Driscoll, the former executive director of operations at Lifeline, an Australian charity providing 24-hour crisis support and suicide prevention. We condition boys from a very young age not to express emotion because to express emotion is to be weak. There's another woman, Mara Granu, executive director at the Center for Suicide Prevention in Canada, points out it's how we talk to our children and how we encourage them to communicate about themselves too. Mothers talk way more to their girl children than to their boy children, and they share and identify feelings more, she says. We almost expect women to be emotional. Very, very big risk factor in that. And we've got to get away from this idea of toxic masculinity. I'm not totally sold on that particular idea that there is a such thing as toxic masculinity, but I do think that we need to get more men to be more expressive, not to bottle things up on the inside, and to be able to express their feelings, their thoughts, their concerns, and their desires, and not to be seen as weak. Many times in the police world, that's exactly what's going on. There's such a call and the need for these males to be such alpha males that to show any sign of weakness, whether it's amongst their peers, especially amongst the street, right? You have to show the criminal and or you come into any type of situation and show them that you're in charge. And this creates that toxic masculinity type of problem. And this creates the toxic buildup within their system because they always have to feel that as if they're in charge. Now, the question can be asked whether they become cops because they're already this way, they're already genetically predisposed to being this type of personality, or because they develop that personality once they get into the line of work. We could go on and on about that kind of thing. But the point of it is that it's creating toxic environments in which men and women are killing themselves. And another thing, that they go on about in these articles is talking about the economic downturns. Now, we understand that with this coronavirus and many other factors, that the economy is being affected, the stock market is tanking. And so therefore, many men are taking to committing suicide because of these situations that we're dealing with on an everyday basis. So I thought that these articles were very, very important, and we have to understand them. So let me just, while I'm talking about this, let me just give some of the warning signs. And this comes from that policemag.com article that I was talking about. Some warning signs may include displaying feelings of hopelessness, withdrawing from family and friends, increased alcohol consumption, noticeable change in weight, either gains or loss, ending typically beloved recreational activities, right? They stop going out and doing things, sudden unexpected outbursts of anger and sadness, increased risk taking both on and off duty, a change in personal demeanor, saying things like, y'all take care of my family if I die, right? Threatening suicide. Many suicide victims verbally telegraph their death. So those are just some of the things to be on the lookout from. So let me get back to this other article about the strongest predictor of men's well-being isn't family or health. As feminism is increasingly defined as liberation for all people of genders, definitions of masculinity continue to shift away from traditional and many argue toxic norms, long characterized by physical strength, emotional repression, and socio-cultural power. Masculinity is being defined by many of today's most influential men to include traits like compassion, sensitivity, honesty, and empathy. That's exactly what I was talking about in that other article, right? Before we were talking about how strong people were, how big they were. It was concentrated on emotional repression, socio-cultural power. And this is something that, unfortunately, a lot of white males are dealing with the loss of, not only when they lose their economic status, what they perceive to be someone of another ethnicity on their job, or have to listen to someone who's of another ethnic background from a boss's perspective as their boss. But this creates problems for them, and also now they have to listen to women as their boss as well. So this becomes very problematic for people. Right. So they have to redefine what it means to be a man and masculinity in today's time. And that means that you have to have compassion, sensitivity, honesty, and empathy. It's incredible that honesty was there, right? You'd think that honesty would not be there, but some people did not think that they had to be honest at all times. They certainly did not think that they had to be empathetic to other person's needs. There was a 2018 Harry's Masculinity Report, and Harry's is the name of a grooming company over there in the UK. I believe they also sell products here in the United States as well. They surveyed 5,000 men ages 18 to 95 across the U.S. They did it they made sure that they were equal in their race, their income, education, sexual orientation, military service, and a lot more variables there. The respondents were asked about their happiness, confidence, emotional stability, motivation, optimism, and sense of being in control. They were then asked how satisfied they were with their careers, relationship, money, work, life balance, physicality, and mental health, and also about the values that matter to them most. The results showed a clear trend. The strongest predictor of happiness, of men's happiness and well-being, is their job satisfaction by a large margin. And the largest predictor of job satisfaction is whether men feel they are making an impact on their company's success. So think about that. If the strongest predictor of their mental, emotional well-being is their job satisfaction, and there's an economic downturn, they get laid off, they have to now listen to a female boss, to a boss who may be of a different ethnic background and makeup, this is causing for their mental instability, and this is increasing their chances of suicide. This measure, the study finds, influenced by whether men feel they are using their own unique talents at work, whether they are surrounded by a diverse set of perspectives, how easily and often they can chat with coworkers, whether they feel their opinions are valued, and whether they are inspired by the people they work with. The results aligned with Harry's 2017 survey of 2,000 men in the UK, which similarly found that satisfying, secure employment is the strongest predictor of British men's positive mindset. Men who have high job satisfaction are likely to be content in their other aspects of their life. Following job satisfaction, top indicators of positive mindset and wellness for American men are, in descending order, their physical and mental health, income, age. Men over the age of 50 were significantly happier, especially in the U.S. Midwest, and relationship status. The survey found that 91% of married men had normal or better levels of mental positivity, compared with 80% of single or unmarried men. Regionally, friendship is a particularly strong predictor of well-being for men in the West and the Northeast, while socializing through sports and healthy competition was a strong indicator of well-being for men in the U.S. South. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it, right? Your relationship status, your age, how well you are physically, are you part of a sports team, all this type of stuff. But the number one predictor by far is how well we're doing at work. And so I think that really says a lot about just the genetic makeup of men. And we're born to do things, born to hunt and fix things, and want to be seen as our opinions are valuable. And then we want to bring something to the table when we go into work and have some type of value. And if we don't have those things, right, if we're getting laid off and we don't feel as if our income is where it should be, and our boss isn't listening to us and berating us and putting us down, then that creates a lot of emotional instability and a lot of mental discomfort. And so we take these different extreme actions in order to try to solve these types of problems. So I want men and women to be very mindful of this type of stuff. Do what you can to reach out. If you see a loved one in this state of being, and maybe he's going through some of those predictors that I talked about before, gaining weight, losing weight, increased alcoholism, taking risks, a lot of outbursts of sadness, withdrawing from family and friends, displaying feelings of hopelessness, male, female, police officer, non-police officer. If you see these types of things going on, make sure that you're reaching out, become an active part of that person's life, ask them to get help, ask them if everything's all right, and understand that they're going to not always be honest about it, but you have to do what you have to do to try to intervene. That's what I wanted to talk about for today. And I hope that I really said something that really kind of sparks something in your mind in order to try to do something that you can do. Now, I always try to end off those other sessions that I had with trying to understand what we can do. Some of this is really just genetic. Now, I'm not taking a defeatist attitude with this, but this is something that men deal with and we have to go through. You know, when I went through my own heart situation, my triple bypass, it created a lot of depression within my own mind, and I had to go talk to someone. And, you know, even now, there's some days where I have good days and bad days, to be honest with you. And this podcast really helps me to really stay focused. And because, you know, I have to really, you know, my job satisfaction is really making sure that I accomplish a lot of different things throughout the day and make sure that I am actually still a productive member of society. So I totally understand this. When as a man, you don't feel like as if you're not doing something, then you kind of feel like a slug. Men want to feel as if they are important, that they're contributing to the lives of their family, contributing to their jobs. And so this is very, very important to them. So I would say to the men out there, continue to strive for goals, continue to reach for higher heights. You know, don't let the temporary circumstances of a layoff, of a passed over for a promotion, passed over for a special assignment, allow you to be detoured. Go seek help if you need to. Talk to your preacher, a priest, a best friend, and try to get the help that you would need. So I really want to focus on that. So if women out there, if you think that just because your man in your life has a nice family, you provide him a nice home, that he should be content, it's not always the case. So be very mindful of that he, the greatest predictor of his mental health and satisfaction is whether he is satisfied on his job. So that's just the way that it is in the vast majority of the cases. So let me end this episode by giving out some phone numbers for people to call. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. Safe Call Now, 1-206-459-3020. There's Cop Line for all the officers out there, but I'm sure anyone could call it, and they can refer you to whoever you need to call. 1-800-267-5463. Please make sure that you rate, subscribe, and share. Please become a supporter of the podcast through Captain Hunter's podcast on Patreon, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. All of those are CPTL Hunter. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Captain Hunter's podcast on Facebook. Instagram and Twitter are both CPTL Hunter. Rate, subscribe, and share these episodes. If there is a subject you'd like to hear about or a guest you want me to talk to, make sure you hit me up in the email, cptlhunter@gmail.com. Still have a lot of great episodes and interviews coming up. So this is just a midweek touch-up. Make sure that we're staying on track, staying on focus. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, much love and peace.